Let's welcome our special panelists, Michael Holland, CEO, Embassy Office Parks, joining me from Bangalore, and Devina Gildial, Deputy MD, RIC South Asia, here in our Delhi studio. Devina and Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. Devina, let me begin with you. Your recent report on the outlook for commercial real estate in India definitely points to a revival in commercial real estate. But how strong is this really, and is it here to stay?
Vasudha, I think I'll go back to the current scenario, which is elections, and we are saying that effectively, I think in our country, elections are a 5-yearly obsession. And we link back all fortunes to it, and all changes in fortunes are linked back to it. Unfortunately, the connection doesn't really stand the test of time or statistics really. So barring the short-term blips that we really see, we don't really see any long-term effect that really happens due to elections. But I think this time the scenario is a little different. So we've had a very loud and noisy elections, but I think the good news really is that we've got the best that we could get out of this particular election. So we've got a stable government at the center. We've got a clear majority. The new government is seen as strong and decisive. Its economic agenda talks about reforms, talks about simplifying procedures. In terms of real estate and infrastructure as well, there's a clear manifesto which talks about industrial corridors. We're talking about the top, getting new 100 cities, housing for everyone by 2022. So I think there's a lot of optimism in the air. There's a lot of hope. The outlook is looking good. So if you're saying what is it that we are really expecting, we are definitely not looking at any sharp upward movement in the short term, really. So unless there's no magic wand that any government can really have. So unless we can, address the issues of, your regulatory bottlenecks, your inflation, your interest rates, which are so high, etc., we are not looking at any large upward movement in the short run. Right, so that of course is a 12 to 18 month scenario, but I think in the short run also there have been some very encouraging signs. So we run this commercial property survey, which is a sentiment survey that we really run, and this quarter we've got some really encouraging early recovery signs. So the occupier demand, the reading that we got this particular quarter was a +7 as against -13 last quarter. What is interesting, Vasudha, is that this has actually ended 7 quarters of negative readings that we have seen quarter on quarter. So effectively from 2011 to now, this is the first time that occupier demand has actually outpaced the rise in availability. And so that's a really interesting, although it's marginal, but that's very interesting, because essentially what we are saying is that there is a demand for quality space. We are also saying that in terms of the inducement packages that the landlords are really giving, we've seen an upward trend there as well. So the offers that are being made are better. Obviously they're doing a little better for the retail side of it as compared to the office in terms of the packages that are being offered. But I think overall it's really good. Rents obviously are looking like they're in the short term, we can say in the Q2 we are looking at a modest pickup, because the last few quarters rents have bottomed out, and we do believe that with all of these signs, with the activity level that will pick up, business volumes that will pick up, transactions that will pick up, I think Q2 should look good.
Should look good. All right. Michael, you've recently frozen one of the largest deals in commercial real estate, acquiring a 60% stake in a Bangalore business park. What do you say? Are good times back for commercial real estate?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I would say I'm not sure that good times ever really went away in some markets. Bangalore's a very solid market. Every year there's 8 to 12 million square feet of take-up over the last 5 years. So there's been some moderation, but there's steady demand in markets like this. Certainly, I would say the points that Devina made about the general broader economy are very pertinent to commercial real estate. What we mustn't forget is that the success of commercial real estate is absolutely linked to and dependent on the success of those corporate occupiers. So what we're looking for success in commercial real estate is that our customers prosper, and many of those customers are in the IT-enabled sector. They're focused on exports. That alone accounts for more than 8% of the GDP of India. That's an industry that we're hoping to see some encouragement from the new government, and that in turn will benefit the commercial real estate space.
Can you pinpoint on one crucial reform that's essential to really, ramp up the demand in the commercial real estate space in India? What are you expecting from the new government in terms of reforms?
I mean, there's a number of areas that some were touched upon earlier on. The issue about predictability, whether it's for the investor in commercial real estate or it's for the occupier. Any hint of retrospective changes in legislation, we've seen the results of that in terms of pouring cold water on international investor interest. Issues that happened over the last few years, for example, around the SEZ legislation, which over a period of time was steadily diluted, so that corporate occupiers who had made a conscious decision to take the benefits of special economic zones over a period of 2, 3, 4 years, they saw those benefits being eroded by steady change. So predictability is one key aspect. From the investors in commercial real estate, the international investors, a key problem over the last year in particular, but over the last 5 years also, has been the steady erosion of the rupee. So that notwithstanding how well one does in a rupee-denominated investment, if one's investing in that at 50 rupees and the rupee slides as it did last year to 60, 69 even, that will take some time for international investors to forget that pain, and they're looking for a government that can steady the rupee so that there's predictability in their business. Similarly, on the other hand, there's a balance that needs to be achieved because most of the IT sector are exporting, and they of course welcome to a certain extent a weaker rupee. So there needs to be an appropriate balance between the desires of international investors and local export-oriented occupiers.
All right, Devina, your report talks about a surge in demand for office spaces, but the not so good news for retail. What's dragging the sentiment there?
Well, I think, Vasudha, what has happened in the past is that a lot of retail malls that were actually planned didn't even get delivered. In fact, there have been some malls in tier 2, tier 3 cities which were actually launched and finally reformatted and sold in a different version. So I think a lot of that has actually resulted in people looking at high street retailing as an option. And I think other than that, a lot of expansion plans have actually gone on hold for the global retailers because they're looking at some clarity on the reforms, they're looking at some clarity on the policies. And I think now that we've got the new government in place, with things getting much clearer, we should hope to see some traction there.
Samir, closing comments from you. What is your forecast for commercial real estate in 2014?
Look, I have a slightly different view. I think clearly rates have bottomed out. There is no doubt about it. But I think the new government has to perform and get the right kind of employment generation happening into the country for commercial real estate to really pick up, whether it is jobs getting outsourced into India. I don't think the government had any role to play in the IT sector pretty much. So that part is yet to be seen as to how globally IT performs and how many jobs come into India. If you look at from a domestic point of view, yes, there is a huge euphoria and there is huge optimism, but that has to yet be seen as to how it translates into actual occupancy. Having said that, I also do believe that there is, especially in tier 1 cities, a huge amount of oversupply that has got created. That huge amount of oversupply, the good news is going to be that is going to start getting occupied. Rates are going to be firm. They are not going to drop anymore. But are we expecting rentals to go 40% up from here? I don't think that's going to happen, because there is enough amount of supply out there, enough amount of land has got released through various master plans in various tier 1 cities. If you look at OMR Road, I would say there's 50% vacancy. Plus of IT parks that are ready and just lying empty. You look at Noida, you look at Gurgaon, there is the Gurgaon golf course extension, for example, that has come up. There is Dwarka Expressway that's come up, which is going to release millions and millions of commercial real estate. at very low price points. And then you have the Delhi master plan. Yeah, Bangalore of course remains firm. It has a firm offtake, but then if you look at Devanahalli area and because of the new airport, you see enough amount of IT parks that will be coming up over there. So I think it's good news, but I don't think rates are going to just skyrocket.
So you're going to be a little wary and see how it pans
my
out.
view is that it's very simple, that rates, there is going to be offtake, which is very good news for the commercial sector, because the commercial sector was dying. Now it's got
suddenly a new ray of hope.
A new hope, a new lease of life, as Devina would say it.
Michael, you had a point to make. You're operating in one of the hottest markets for office spaces. You had something to say to Samir.
Yeah, I mean, many of the points I would agree with Samir. The international aspects of the business, so international economies directly impact the uptake in space in markets like Bangalore. But what we have seen over the last decade is even when international markets turn down, that actually turns a pressure on cost, which results in more offshoring and so on. So in some senses, the outsourcing market gives a level of insulation to the commercial real estate side. And another point that arises out of Samir's comments, I agree with him that in markets like OMR there's significant quantity of vacant space. And the market is becoming more sophisticated around the type of product. So I think one tends to find in most of the tier 1 markets that products of high quality, and generally that's becoming integrated business parks, those types of products are the first that are on the occupiers list. The product that is in danger, that it will have lower rents or it may never even be taken up, is the poor quality product in a poor location. And that applies both to office, but it also applies to retail. So even though one might have some negative pessimistic comments about retail as a whole, if you have a well-located product that's targeted correctly, designed properly, executed well and managed well, those retail malls will continue to do well. There's a strong demand for good retail. So it's a mixed bag, mixed by location, but also by product quality in different markets.
All right, the action returns to commercial real estate in India, but it's going to be at least a year's wait to actually see prices increasing, stable in the medium to near term. All right, Devina and Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.